It's a little too cold for this, but I'm gonna still do it. What's up, everybody? It's Vez, and in today's video we are going to be going over things to look for when purchasing a 99 to 04 Mustang of any level, whether it's a V6, GT, Cobra, Mach 1, Bullet. I think this can also be applied to the 96 to 98 models, but I could be wrong. So if I am wrong, let me know in the comments. This is my 2002 GT, which, if you guys have watched my other videos, I did a whole overview of this car, and I'm going to go through the car from front to back of things you should look for when going to purchase one of these cars. I have a little list here on my phone, so we'll start from front to back. All right, first thing on the list is rust, everyone's worst enemy. So there's a few spots on this car where rust is pretty prominent, so I'm gonna go through and show you. So my car is pretty rust free. It has like small surface rust in certain spots. It's actually very windy and actually very cold out here, so let me actually make sure you guys can see this. I actually made a list. Boom. Okay, so yes, you guys can see what I'm talking about. So common rust spots. So number one is going to be here in the strut tower housing, I guess. I'm not really sure what the actual term is, but right down here and the sides do tend to rust, and you see mine has a little bit of surface rust here, which isn't that bad, but you need to watch out for these towers on both sides, this side and that side, to see if they are rusting. So mine has a little bit of surface rust, but that wasn't that bad, but there are some that have a lot more rust. The brake booster itself does have some rust on it, surface rust. This isn't that big of an issue. It's mainly these strut tower areas that have a lot of rust right here, or even right down in there. You can look to see if it's rusting. So that's one of the primary rust areas. Honestly, if it has rust in those spots, do not buy the car. It's gonna take a lot more time and money to fix that than it's worth, honestly. So that's the first spot. The second spot, actually, if the car is still stock ride height, I'm on coilovers, so my car is really low, but on stock ride height you kind of see straight in there, and you can also see if rust is there also. The other spot that's very, very common is actually in the trunk area. Please excuse my messy trunk. Let me get these out of the way. So in the trunk area, and again, please excuse the mess, down here in this tub where the spare wheel would be, these also tend to rust. Typically, if you just go to one of these cars and look up right here, this is stock sound deadening, but look all in this area, if there is any rust, most likely the underside of this car has a lot of rust. So that's another spot to look. Directly under this is your gas tank, so you can't really see it if you go underneath the car, but just lift up the carpet and you should be able to see that just fine. Another area that rusts, and this kind of like a hit or miss, is the quarter. So my car actually had this problem right here. You can barely see, but it's splitting, but this is all rusted. I kind of treat it as best as I can. Again, it's a beater car, so I don't really care too much, but check the rear wheel well and quarters to see if there is any rust. So going over again, the strut tower areas, the trunk and rear wheel well and quarters, check those, check for rust. Okay, those you can do when you go look at any car. Is not too hard to see, and that will save you a lot of time and a lot of money. Okay, next on the list is the front frame. So specifically right up here. So this car is a accident-free car, but that, you know, the titles on these cars can easily be manipulated just by, you know, not telling insurance or anyone else. The best way to know if there was ever a front collision is to check these welds, and even down here you can sometimes see if the frame where it comes out right here that mounts onto the bumper, if that has been pushed in. It's not that hard to tell. This headlight is actually really easy to pull out. You just lift this one up and this pin up, so these two pins, and this headlight comes right out, and you could see, actually, you know what, I'll show you guys. There's the headlights out, and then you can see this entire area. If anything over here, and you actually see down there a bit better, I don't know if you can see on camera, but you can see down there a bit better. If that looks pinched in at all, most likely this car was in a front end collision. That is the easiest way to tell. Of course, if you check the Carfax, that's also another easy way to tell, but in case you didn't, that is a foolproof way to check. This side and this side, both headlights come out exactly the same, so that is another thing to look for. All right, the next thing to look for, which isn't a deal breaker again, is the Dorman intake. So these cars from factory came with a Ford Performance PI intake. On those intakes, what these engines come with from factory, these cars will make around 220 to 230 to the wheels. Now, in a video I made the other day when I was going through the review of the car and how much my car made, a lot of people are saying, well, hey, your car needs a rebuild, or, you know, your engine's making more than that. Just so you know, when you look up online, it says a 2-valve GT makes 260 horsepower, but that is crank horsepower, not wheel horsepower. Wheel horsepower is a lot different than crank horsepower. So wheel horsepower from the factory, these cars putting down to the rear wheels, you know, stressing that, these cars will make between 220 to 230 rear wheel horsepower. There's plenty of dyno videos of these cars bone stock showing those, between those numbers, from factory with nothing done. Now, one common problem is over time, the manifold can crack. So what a lot of auto shops do is they get a factory or OE replacement manifold, which is most likely the Dorman intake manifold. The Dorman manifold, while it looks very similar to the PI manifold, actually robs horsepower from the engine. Make sure no one's sneaking up on me. So with a Dorman manifold on the vehicle, your Mustang will be making anywhere from 190 and 210 wheel horsepower. So about a 20 horsepower difference simply due to the intake manifold. So there's a few ways to tell. The easiest way to tell is the runner sizing. These runners are a lot skinnier and they have these plastic tabs. Well, the whole thing's pretty much plastic, but they have these little connections here. That is kind of a dead giveaway to tell if this is a PI or a Dorman. Mine is most likely a Dorman. They do make Dorman manifolds that are very, very, very similar to the PI. And the only way for you to tell if that one is a Dorman or not is to check where the screws that holds down your coil packs, coil on plus coil packs, your coils, the screw that holds it in, if the actual manifold side is threaded, it is a PI. If it's not threaded, it's Dorman. Mine is not threaded, so mine is most likely a Dorman manifold, which means my car is making about 10 to 20 less wheel horsepower than it should. And I was able to figure that out when I came to change my spark plugs, and I noticed that this doesn't have any threads. The previous owner honestly just threw it in there with some like tape or something to hold it down. To be honest, my fuel rails are actually holding the coil pack on. Little ghetto fix, but that is one way to know. There are other ways, but I'll be completely honest with you, I do not know everything. I've heard you can also tell by the alternator bracket if it is. You can also tell by where your plenum bolts in. There's many ways. I cannot verify those, but how I can tell is by the threads on the coils or just the intake runner shape. But that is another thing to look out for. It's not a deal breaker. The car runs perfectly fine. Just know you'll be making about 10 to 20 less wheel horsepower. To get another PI manifold, you can find them used for about $100, brand new between 300 and 400 bucks, depending on where you go. Since we're here on the engine bay, the next thing to look for, and you can't really look for it, you kind of have to figure it out on test drive, is if the car burns oils. Two valves are known for having valve stem seal issues, especially in high mileage, which essentially lets excess oil into, if I'm not mistaken, the heads, and it gets, or into the cylinders where it gets combust and just burns oil. So my car has that issue. My car burns oil, and you'll notice at a red light when you sit there and waiting, and then light goes green and you get on the car, a puff of smoke comes out the back. I know if it's blue smoke it's fuel, and if it's white smoke it's oil. I think that, I could be wrong, don't quote me, but mine is 100% oil. It's not fuel. So that's another thing to look out for. Look out to see if the car burns oil. Little fixes: you could get the valve stem seals redone. It's something you can do yourself or take it to a shop. Valve stem seals aren't expensive, it's just the labor. You need to take pretty much everything off and take the valve covers off, take the cams out, and replace those seals. And so there's a 2 valve, you have, I think, if I'm not mistaken, there is 8 on this side, 8 on this side, so you need to replace 16. So that is what you would need to do. Another thing you can do is get a catch can. Now I have a catch can, a JLT 3.0, hoping it'll help my issue. I can't say if it does or doesn't. It does catch oil, as it should, which, you know, stops oil from the PVC back into the so this hose will run from your PVC back into your plenum. This just catches any oil and separates it in this can and sends it back to the plenum. Some say that would help. I can't guarantee if it does or does not. I have one on my car, it catches oil. I think it works. My car's been burning oil since I've owned it, since the previous owner owned it. It still runs strong, no issues. So it's not a deal breaker, but it's something you could look out for, and something you can see if you can negotiate a few $100s off the price of the car, because the car does burn oil, and it is kind of an extensive repair. To be honest with you, depending on who you ask, they'll tell you just swap the motor at that point, because the time that it will take for you to do that, if you're experienced, a day or two, you can have a new 2 valve in here. And a new engine for these cars costs anywhere from $400 to $800 depending on mileage. You get a crate engine for about $1,500 to $2,000, but you can find another used Crown Vic or Lincoln Town Car engine, swap the valve covers, and throw it back in the car, and boom, now you have another 2 valve. And next is going to be some smaller issues. Actually, wait, no, before we do that, let's head to the interior, because there's one other thing you can look for. So when you are inside the car, if you turn the car to heat, so hot, and turn the fan on, if you smell something sweet, it's most likely coolant, if not an air freshener. But if you smell it sweet, excuse me, it's most likely coolant. That is a great sign. Well, not a great sign, but it's a very prominent sign of your heater core is leaking. Another way to tell is if your passenger side carpet is damp after turning the heat on. That's the coolant leaking down. So those are the 2 easiest ways to tell. To replace that, it's kind of a pain in the ass. You need to take the whole dashboard out and remove the hoses. I think you need special tools to remove the hoses. Take the heater core out and put the heater core back in and reassemble the dashboard. You could probably get it done today. Mine actually does that. It does smell like coolant, but mine does not leak to the floor, which, you know, we've had some theories, and we think that it was leaking at one point it was replaced, but it's probably excess coolant, sorry, that was dried in the vents, and that's what I'm smelling. But we really don't know. That could all just be foo-foo and just, you know, not the case. But my heat blows nice and hot, but every time I do turn it on, for like 5 seconds, I smell coolant. But after those 5 seconds, I don't smell it anymore. It's gone. And, you know, at first it was like, yeah, you get nose blind to it. But no, I've stepped out of the car and had someone else come into the car and say, hey, do you smell coolant? And they said, no, I don't. So I'm not sure what that is. But in the case of you're buying one of these cars, turn that on. See what you smell. If it smells like coolant, most likely heater core is leaking. Again, another thing you can use to negotiate the price of these cars down from what the seller is, you know, trying to sell you the car for. While I'm on the interior, we'll go over some of the smaller, more like nitpicking things. So there's some common things. Number one, the radio bezel cracked. So mine is cracked. Mine is a 40th anniversary bezel. My car is not a 40th anniversary, but it just came with this, the shifter bezel and the radio bezel. When you take these on and off, they do tend to crack. Now this came this way, I did not do this, so be careful when removing this piece. If you want to put in a radio or do anything with the shifter, anything like that, be careful with this piece. They are prone to cracking. You could buy a brand new one from LMR for about $130 and get another double din. You can find some at junkyards. You can find some on Facebook Marketplace. They're not hard to find, but that is something that is prone to cracking. Another thing which is very common, which let's see if I can show you, is with the cluster. So you see my cluster lit up. Oh, it's back. So one thing that will happen is the wires that are soldered into the circuit board behind the cluster will get loose, and that boop, and sometimes your odometer right here will cut in and out. See, mine is lit up right now. Actually, you know, let me check. Oh wow, my car has 250,000 miles on it, so I hit over the 250,000 mile mark. Woo, this thing's old, but it will flicker on and off. Sometimes it'll go away and won't come back for, you know, the whole drive, or it'll, you know, come back in and chip out. That's another common issue. Nothing you can really negotiate on that. It doesn't affect anything with the vehicle. It's just kind of annoying. Can you fix it? Probably. Do you risk damaging your motherboard? Yes. I would just leave it alone. But yeah, guys, let me know what you think about my list. Those are the items that I believe that anyone should be able to, you know, look at when they go to purchase one of these cars. Things that are easy, the owner shouldn't mind, and can, you know, possibly save you a few bucks pointing those things out, and probably get a better deal on the car. If there's anything that I missed out, put it down in the comments below. I love reading the comments. I love responding. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for 100 subscribers. I was not expecting to get there that fast, and I really do appreciate it. There's more videos to come, and like the video if you enjoyed. Again, comment. I love to read your comments. If there's anything that you want to see me do with this car, let me know. Like I said, the next video is going to be mods that I believe you should do to one of these cars, make it more aesthetically pleasing, and certain things you should just do to these cars in general, just for your safety. Brakes. But other than that, it's been Vez. Thank y'all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.